You know what to do. You hit that subscribe button, you hit that notification bell, and perhaps, um, you'll get a chance to hear what I have to say all the time. Very convenient. So, good morning to you all. I would have been here a little earlier, but I got majorly disrupted over things that happened to me yesterday. Nothing related to the content of this video, but suffice to say, um, I've been wanting to talk about this subject. And I think that probably this is as good a time as any to do so. So, as you know, Israel and Hamas are fighting again. Really, the first time, seemingly, since 2014. And I think that maybe for the last few years, that was kind of like an uneasy ceasefire. If there was any skirmishes, I think that might have been kind of minor. I'm not sure. But the thing about it is that the point is they're fighting again. And a lot of people don't like the both sides scenario. And I would have been very guilty at one time of the both sides scenario. And I would have been guilty of even not being on the one side scenario, but being on the opposite position previously. Now, let me explain because there's a lot of nuance on this. And I'm going to give you, I guess you can call it my evolving issues when it comes to the the controversy of Israel. When I was younger, considering this was a little different time, when I was younger, I used to be a strong supporter of Israel at one time, long time ago. And what I mean by that is that my understanding of the Jewish state from a leftist perspective. This is where I was coming from. And basically, as a I'm not Jewish, but as I became a leftist, I don't know, I saw a lot of Jewish people historically be involved with the struggle for leftist causes, and I sort of correlated the Jewish identity with the left being for what was positive values, and I kind of lumped it in with the state of Israel at one point. And hear me out, because before you jump to any conclusions, I have to explain this. And the thing about it is, historically, it's still true. Historically, Israel was created by predominantly Jewish social democratic Zionists and Jewish communist Zionists. Israel was established as a socialist state in 1948. The kibbutz movement helped create the state of Israel. And if anybody who knows anything about the history of the kibbutz, had it not been for the kibbutz, more likely the country would have never ever been created. And so I get a lot of odd stares from both social justice warriors on the left and evangelical Christians from the right. And they look at me at best with curiosity and shock, and at worst, both an SJW on the left and an evangelical Christian on the right will want to strangle me for saying what I say about Israel. But that was my position. My position was that Israel was created as as a socialist state, and the Soviet Union actually was one of the first countries in the world to recognize the state of Israel, establish diplomatic ties, and to actually prop up and help Israel survive. I mean, they even sold weapons to Israel for many, many years. So today, neoconservatives are in shock when Israel was not established as this 700 club playland that is kind of given today. Now, as the years went on by, I had to stop lying to myself about Israel. I mean, no, it was true about Israel being established as a socialist state and everything. That was true. But over the years, Israel started to do a lot of shitty things. And that's where things started to evolve for the worse. And and I would tell you some of the terrible things they have done over the years. Um, for maybe the sake of their survival, but they were actually starting to, as the Soviet Union and as the Eastern Bloc started to slide away, and the Western left started to slide away from their support of Israel. Um, what happened was that over the years, Israel started linking themselves with very questionable characters around the world. And I mean, like for example, they had a positive relationship with the apartheid government of South Africa, which objectively, this is a true thing they did. This is one of the things to condemn Israel for. Not going to sit there and look at a country who deals with South Africa during apartheid in a positive way and say, Israel's a good place to be. It's good country. No, 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 no. Now, United States have done the same thing, supporting the apartheid government in South Africa. Many countries in the West have done that. I mean, and Israel is no more guilty than other countries in the West. Now, these are things to criticize Israel for. The to oppress the Palestinian people within the West Bank and Gaza. Those are legitimate reasons to criticize Israel. And you're not an anti Semite for criticizing Israel on policies where Israel is doing wrong. Now, if you're within the Middle East, if you're a radical within Islam, or in the West, if you are a white nationalist or white supremacist on the far right, and either of those two groups uh, hate Israel specifically because of its Jewish characteristic, I do not want to link cause with such people. White nationalists or radical Islamic extremists within the Islamic world who hates Israel because it's Jewish, those two groups can go to hell. I'm talking about factions that have this kind of ass backwards view. I have no time for anti Semitism. Having that said, Israel, in spite of Israel has a lot of weird juxtapositions going on about them. I mean, it is the safest place to be LGBTQ. You have women's equality. There is no death penalty domestically within Israel itself for ordinary crimes. Um, there is universal health care, and they have a proportional representation in their Knesset, which includes Arab political parties. A political party that I do like within the state of Israel is Meretz, which is a social democratic pacifist party that wants peace with the Palestinians. And so, anyway, now here's the thing: my criticisms really started to take place, and I started to question my position on Israel in starting really in 2009 with the election of Benjamin Netanyahu, who is one of the worst heads of states if you want to consider Israel a democratic state today, which is sliding quickly toward theocracy, by the way. That secular tradition is long gone. It's sliding toward theocracy. And the election of Benjamin Netanyahu, who is secular himself, giving a lot of political power to the clerics in within Israel, trying to basically create a something that's equivalent to what the mullahs do in places like Iran. I don't care if it's being done by Islamic clerics, Christian clerics in the West, or Jewish clerics within Israel. Any society, anywhere on this planet that favors theocracy over a secular society, those movements needs to be opposed. That means here in the United States, I don't want a bunch of Christian fanatics controlling U.S. policy. I don't want I don't want Islamic fanatics to control policies anywhere in the Middle East, and I don't want Jewish clerical fanatics to do the same thing within the borders of Israel itself. I support secular governments and the concept of secular governments anywhere around the world in every country. So I want that to be the set records to be set straight. Benjamin Netanyahu is a little different from previous prime ministers in Israel, bad ones and good ones alike. And what I mean by that is that he's really a product of American right wing political culture. If Benjamin Netanyahu lived here in the United States and he was elected, he'd be another Ted Cruz. He'd be another, he'll be something along those lines. I mean, he'll be, in media. He'll be a talking head on Fox News. He would be the kind of person during the Obama years praising the Tea Party. He would be a regular on a program like the 700 Club. He is praised currently by people like Pastor John Hagee. He's a piece of work, folks. Benjamin Netanyahu was the one urging the United States to go into Iraq in 2003, the early days after 9/11, urging the U.S. government, you need to go after Saddam Hussein. You need to remove him. You need to remove him. The one war where it's everybody pretty much, if you have a brain in the United States, pretty much everybody discredited. Oh, everybody except for Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney, who goes around saying, oh, the Iraq war was still a good thing. It wasn't. You can blame people like Benjamin Netanyahu for this. And the relationship between him and Barack Obama. Now, with Barack Obama, with the election of Barack Obama in 2008 and Benjamin Netanyahu getting elected a few months later, early 2009 in Israel, this complicated the relationship. Now, Barack Obama, contrary to what the right wing says about Barack Obama, he is not anti-Israel. He's not anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, what have you. Even when I was in the pro-Israel side, my position on Israel was still a hell of a lot more critical than Barack Obama's position. Not that I'm important. I'm just stating that as fact. The fact that they thought that Barack Obama was a secret Muslim trying to destroy Western civilization. Oh, he was born in Kenya and he wasn't born in Hawaii. He's a secret Muslim trying to destroy Western civilization. That was the mindset. And so even John Boehner, the Speaker of the House, who was, more moderate than some of those goons from the Tea Party within Congress, he was enough of a partisan hack to go and to have Benjamin Netanyahu to go and bring Benjamin Netanyahu to speak in the joint session of Congress to try to put a stop to this Iran-U.S. nuclear treaty. And such hypocrites they are in Congress because they sat there, a lot of these right-wing Republicans sat there, and they just almost looked at Benjamin Netanyahu as if he was almost a messianic figure. These same people hated Pope Francis, who eventually spoke in joint session of Congress a few years later. And I'm going to set the record straight. Give me Pope Francis on his worst day, any day, before Benjamin Netanyahu, who is a son of a bitch, a war criminal. Evangelical Christians worship Benjamin Netanyahu. They think you got to support Israel at all costs. If you don't, God's going to punish us. Ah! These people, they pretend to love the Jews. What really they want a lot of them, they want Israel and Iran to drum up war against each other and eventually toss some nukes at each other to fulfill what they consider, prophecy. They want to start World War III. Not Israel, not the Israeli people per se, not Jews, but evangelical Christians, and and they want to upset the fundamentalist Muslims, and to they want to bring in this kind of apocalypse situation. When the Jew Karl Marx said that religion was the opiate of the masses, he might have been kind of right in this particular instance. But that's the situation. And let me tell you about these evangelicals who claim that they love the Jews. A lot of them do not like Hollywood. They associate Hollywood with Jews. A lot of them don't like the so-called radical feminist agenda or the radical LGBTQ agenda because they associate that with Jews. They don't like academics and the media, the so-called liberal media, because they think they're Jews. They detest the American Civil Liberties Union because they for damn sure think and associate that with Jews. Teacher unions, Jews. This is how they think. But then they go around and pretend to love the Jews. I mean, as much as Rick Wiles is a piece of crap, um, at least when he talked about Ben Shapiro, he was being honest. You know, wrong but honest. Anti-BDS legislation. Boycott, disinvestment, sanctions against Israel. And I'm going back to this Gaza skirmish in a moment. I'm saying all this for as a pretext to what I need to talk about. Anti-BDS, boycott, disinvestment, sanctions. You have secular neocon evangelical Christian types, and you got corporate Democrats who are, they don't like each other on abortion, they don't like each other on gun control and LGBTQ rights and all that, but they're united on things like boycott, disinvestment, and sanctions. They want to go and punish people for exercising their free speech. And to the left, the faction of the left that believes censorship is okay, you're going to reap what you sow. You're seeing several states enact anti-BDS legislation that could put you in prison up to 20 years for hurting Israel's feelings. And the thing about it is, I mean, when you got a government that wants to sit there and to arrest and criminalize a political movement, well, you know what that tells me? That tells me that there's validity to the movement. Now, I have my issues about whether to support BDS or not. And I know there are different types of ways that you can support BDS. Um, and I'm not going to make any apologies. I am on the fence whether I should support BDS or not. But what I'm basically saying is, with a problem, this is one of the problems right here. And it's actually some of these things just made me question, you know, about Israel. Now, Israel committed national suicide when they elected Benjamin Netanyahu. And I'm going to tell you what former President Richard Nixon said when it came to the Israeli Arab conflicts over the years. He says that Israel could win out of 100 wars. Israel can win 99 of those wars and it will always exist. But when they lose that 100 war with the Arab world and they ultimately lose, they'll never get their state back. And what he basically said, and I'm no fan of Richard Nixon, he basically said that the Israelis better try to settle this conflict and settle this situation where they can live in peace with their Arab neighbors. And he would be correct about this. Israel's going to get into a situation where they're not going to have a country left because of some of the things that they're doing. and they're losing sympathy around the world. Now, the fact that they're losing sympathy around the world, and they lose their nationhood, they're never going to get that back. And the route that they're on, turning the country from secularism into a theocratic state, and getting bold in their mistreatment against the Palestinians. This is what's going to destroy the country and make it disappear. I do not think this is going to be the end of the world if it disappears, because I'm a rational human being. But the thing about it is that they're on the road to national suicide, and they better find a way to resolve it, or they're going to cease to exist. I am If I was a betting man, I would say that the country will cease to exist in the year 2030. By 2030, there will probably no longer be a state of Israel. And I'll tell you now, looking back historically, I think it might have been a mistake for the Zionist settlers to actually settle in Palestine. I think that maybe the solution would have been to, maybe after World War II, maybe between the Allied powers, the United States, Great Britain, um, France, and the Soviet Union, they should have carved off a piece of land in Germany to make as a Jewish state. It could have been in Europe. I think that it would not have been controversial. I don't think it will complicate matters the way it has complicated matters today. And I think that I just that's it's just my opinion. Or find a piece of land somewhere in the world where the population doesn't mind um, s- selling portions of land that a small country could be created. So that's kind of a point of view I look at, and I know there's a lot of people that are not going to like that point of view, but that's that's what I think could have happened. But between the Likud government, the radical clerics, and Benjamin Netanyahu urging the United States to go into Iraq, and urging them to go into Syria, and urging them to go into Iran. Um, we're talking about a country that's not really interested in peace. Well, at least the government, anyway. Let's let's separate the people from the government. The United States, there's nothing wrong with the United States as far as the people. There's a lot wrong with our politicians, and you could say that about any country in the world. And here's the thing: Hamas got legitimized by the U.S. government. Now, let me tell you about Hamas. Hamas was actually created by the Israeli Mossad, and it was created to disrupt. This is back in the 70s. They created Hamas to disrupt the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which was largely leftist and largely secular. And its remnants today is Fatah. But the thing about it is, there's the war going on between Fatah, the Palestinian Authority, and Hamas. And Fatah is largely secular. Fatah is, Hamas is radical religious. And so the United States Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice made a big mistake in 2006. She legitimized Hamas by pressuring Israel and the Palestinian Authority to hold elections into Gaza. So, neoconservatism actually played a role in Hamas being legitimized. And the Israeli government, who sides with the neocons, got no one to blame but themselves for creating this monster. They created Hamas, and their American allies helped them legitimize Hamas. And they got a problem. Now, now when Hamas, when they attack and fire rockets into Israel, and one person die within Israel, that is one Israeli too many that died. Okay. By the same token, when Israel retaliates, and 40 or 50 or 100 people die in Gaza, we're talking about innocent people. That is 100 innocent Palestinians too many that needlessly died. So the thing about it is that there was a time, even when Israel used to defend themselves, there was a time that they would warn the population they were going to go and bomb, and that the people who are not involved in this conflict, they gave them time to run away, and so they would escape the bombings. Not so much anymore, because you got a war criminal by the name of Benjamin Netanyahu, and he is a bloodthirsty ghoul, as bloodthirsty as Dick Cheney, as bloodthirsty as John Bolton, as bloodthirsty as Mike Pompeo, as bloodthirsty as Liz Cheney, as bloodthirsty as the mullahs in Iran, as bloodthirsty as Saudi Arabia, as bloodthirsty as ISIS, as bloodthirsty as Al Qaeda and the Taliban. And the thing about it is, anybody who wants to call me anti-Semitic for saying this, listen, is it anti-Muslim to say United States should not sell weapons to Saudi Arabia and to go and use it to commit genocide in Yemen? I don't think most people are going to say, well, that's Islamophobic. And that the resources that the United States give to Saudi Arabia is funneling money to commit terrorism against the West. Here's the dirty little secret. Everybody wants to consider Iran a terrorist state. Well, compared to Saudi Arabia, Iran is very peaceful compared to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the one that commits terrorism against the West. And we're friends with Saudi Arabia, but we want to go and kick Iran around and get mad because the best thing Barack Obama did was to sign a peace treaty with Iran. And that dummy, Donald Trump, came in just to go and appease the neocon and to appease the evangelicals. He tore up that peace treaty. But then again, the one good thing Donald Trump did foreign policy-wise was to make peace with North Korea. And one could argue that North Korea is more unstable than Iran. I'm glad that there was peace with North Korea. Now, I hope that peace process continued. But the thing about it is, if it's not Islamic phobic to criticize the United States for selling arms to Saudi Arabia, and then a genocide is being committed in places like Yemen, is it really anti-Semitic to say the United States shouldn't give money and weapons to Israel to go and use overwhelming power into Gaza and commit a genocide within Gaza? Because on two fronts, that's what the United States is doing. We're overseeing we're enabling Saudi Arabia to commit a genocide in Yemen, and we are also enabling Israel to commit a genocide within Gaza. Again, I don't want this to be construed of, oh, well, you're being pro Hamas. No, I'm not. Hamas can go to hell too. I hate Hamas. I hate the Likud party. I hate the monarchy in Saudi Arabia. I hate Al Qaeda. I hate all those assholes. I am concerned about the average person in all of these countries. The average citizen, whether it's the average citizen in the Gaza, the average citizen in Israel, the average citizen in the Palestinian Authority, the average person in Saudi Arabia, the average person in Yemen. I don't care. The average person in Nebraska. The point I'm trying to make is that anybody that dies in these conflicts is one person too many. And this is where I'm getting at. That maybe it's time. I wouldn't have said this a few years ago, but maybe it's time that the United States tell Israel, you want money from the United States? You're going to have to behave. You're going to have to stop mistreating the Palestinians, and you're going to have to start to negotiate with your enemies. And it doesn't mean that you're going to negotiate with them, with your enemies, and your enemies are going to get 100% what they want. But it does mean then you're going to have to be a responsible player. Now, I will argue that the only way things are going to get resolved for the better is secular moderates on both sides. I still believe that. And it could end up being translated into a two-state solution that works. Or if there is a successor toward the state of Israel, it sure as hell better be one where nobody will be oppressed on any side. Not one Palestinian being oppressed, not one Jew being oppressed, where both people and other people who are neither Jewish nor Islamic can live as equal. That will be one of the solutions, or a two-state solution that is guaranteed to work. And I think that maybe a two-state solution is more feasible still, and that means that Israel, you're going to have to let the West Bank go. You're going to have to let the Golan Heights go. You're going to have to let Gaza go. Because right now, as I see it, many times in the past, I objectively see how Israel were justified in some occasional defense measures. I can't justify this now. I cannot justify this now. Because right now, Israel is being the aggressor. Now, this could change, and the other side could do something totally fucked up tomorrow. And if they do something more fucked up, they would be the aggressor. But you got to go and to make a start toward peace somewhere. Now, for some people that wants Israel to cease to exist tomorrow, um, be realistic, because if that happens, there's going to be a lot of dead Arabs. There's going to be a lot of dead Jews. There's going to be a lot of dead people all around, no matter who is the ultimate victor. And that's where I stand. And you got to go and to work hard for the peace movement. And if there isn't, this shit's going to just continue and continue and continue until one side or the other would be the absolute victor, and nobody should want that. So, the thing about it is, Israel, you got a decision to make if you want to survive. And in my heart of hearts, from 1948 until recent years, if you want to, people, in my heart of hearts, I may still be a socialist Zionist or labor Zionist, but that doesn't exist anymore. Israel, the labor Zionism of Israel past ceased to exist, and it's turning into a theocratic state. And to the Israeli people, do not be duped by evangelical Christians in the West that wants to turn your country into a 700 Club Disneyland. They don't like you. They hate you. And don't think that they're on your side because they're glad that Jerusalem is now the state capital instead of Tel Aviv. They hate you. They want you to die with the Iranians. And you shouldn't want that. And the Iranians shouldn't want that either. Any decent human being from all sides shouldn't want that. I don't know how many people are going to hate me for this video, how many subscribers I will lose because how they're interpreting my position. And this is how I see things. So if you like what you heard, press like. If you were bothered, well, comment anyway. Comment either way. Feel free to share content on this channel. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it because we're the muckrakers of our time. And again, feel free to subscribe to this channel and to hit the notification bell. And until next time, I am American social democracy. Peace. Class struggle yesterday, class struggle today, class struggle tomorrow, and class struggle until we achieve full economic and social justice for all, and peace for all parties involved in this current conflict.